the Jewish sound around and about with your walking Jewish encyclopedia, Isaac only on 20 Chai. Welcome, good afternoon from a very cold Johannesburg in the morning, but it warms up in the afternoon. We got in the studio this afternoon Bev Goldman. We're going to do an update on Israel and on the Union of Jewish Women. But as usual, we start off with those who unfortunately passed away. There was Ilana Dembo, Ian Sedano, Edna Cole, Harry Jack Wayner, I'll come back to that, Tammy Dorfan, Myrna Solomon, Annette Savinson, Sydney Green, Elfrieda Ethel Zolberg, Ava Haberfeld, Esther Epstein, and Philip Meyerson. I want to wish the respective families Chaim Tovim Arukim, and may they have no further sorrow. Just to mention Harry Jack Wayner, known as Yankel Wayner, the father of Trevor and Michael Wayner. There is a sister in Israel. Unfortunately, I don't have the name at the moment. Yankel Wayner was a very, very well known in Johannesburg originally, and was married to Bernice, who used to supervise the mikveh at the Federation of Synagogues in Yeovil. Yankel's late father, just as a matter of interest, sang in the choir with the famous Mordechai Hirschman in Vilna in the 1930s. And when Yankel came to South Africa, he also was very involved, went to Jeppe Shul, and I sang in the choir with Yankel as a youngster with the late Chazan Yosef Badash. Now, on a very happy note, I want to wish a hearty mazel tov to Helen Rath on the birth of a granddaughter. Welcome, Bev. How are you in this wonderful, well, as I said, cold, but really it's quite not as cold as what would be in Europe.
Hello, Isaac, and thank you for having me again. And yes, you're quite right. We actually are very fortunate with our weather here. For years and years, people have said that the Transvaal, as it used to be called, has the best climate anywhere, and I suppose it does. It is pretty chilly in the morning, but it always warms up very nicely, and then it gets cold again in the evening. I think we're going to have the same sort of moderate winter that we had last year, and a lot of the retailers took a very bad knock because they'd filled their they'd filled their shops with all sorts of huge, thick coats and boots and hats, and the weather wasn't appropriate enough to buy it. So I hope they learned their lesson. It's a bit of a shocking thing. Isaac, just on all the names of the people who passed away, I'm devastated. I had no idea that there could be so many in the Johannesburg community in 1 week.
In 1 week,
That
yes.
is just quite frightening, isn't it?
It's because of this cold weather, the elderly people, pneumonia, etc. There have been one or two young people, unfortunately, who passed away, like I mentioned a week ago, the late Ronnie Raff, only in the early 60s from cancer.
Yeah.
But the rest is all elderly people. And as a matter of fact, we have now the Cape weather, but at least, thank God, it's now raining in the
Cape Town, yeah. But we've had some rain here, which is most unusual for our weather.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other day it was wet and cold, and but they predict now there's from tomorrow onwards it's going to get much warmer.
Yeah.
Now, Bev, give us an update on whether I'll leave it to you, either from Union of Jewish Women or with the Zionist Federation, or
okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Union of Jewish Women. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to attend the ICJW conference. That's the International Council of Jewish Women. They had their conference in Sydney, in Australia last month, and I believe it was absolutely wonderful. Of course, there were representatives from women's organizations across the world, and they had some very brilliant speakers, one of whom I believe was Victor Aladef, who used to live in South Africa.
Yeah, he was, as a matter of fact, he was the editor of the Zionist
Record. Zionist Record, that's right. And I haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting for my colleagues to show it to me. But I believe they brought a copy of the local Jewish newspaper, and he had a wonderful insert about the ICJW conference. So that was fantastic. It's an amazing organization, Isaac. We have members from close on 40 countries. I'm involved because as part of the Union of Jewish Women is one of their affiliates. So, organizations similar to the Union of Jewish Women are affiliates all over the world. So we have women from Russia and Bulgaria and Eritrea and you name it, from everywhere. And of course, it's a marvelous opportunity for the women to get together and to share experiences and to understand what they're all doing. One of the very big things that the ICJW fights against is trafficking and women abuse, both of which are on the increase, unfortunately, all over the world, and particularly in South Africa. Women abuse is dreadful in South Africa. It's growing exponentially, and in fact, the Union of Jewish Women, we're having a seminar in August and another one in October, and we're going to be dealing with abuse of women and abuse of children, because that's another thing which is very sad here in South Africa, the abuse of Jewish children. One doesn't think it'll happen in the Jewish community, but sadly it does. And steps are being taken. I know that a lot of the shuls are on the alert for abuse of particularly little boys. Do you know that, Isaac? It's becoming almost a toxin in the Jewish community. It's terribly upsetting and very distressing.
You mentioned the abuse of the woman. I read the other day of a boyfriend who goes up to his wife or the ex-girlfriend, shoots her in front of the children. And they don't. It's unbelievable.
I know. It's terribly sad.
It's a shocking thing.
Terribly sad.
And all the young bodies that are being found, young children are being, God forbid, raped. It's a horrible
absolutely
thing.
shocking.
I don't know where that culture comes from.
Well, I know that they don't have similar sorts of things in many other African countries, unfortunately. I think, obviously, apartheid has left terrible memories with everybody, but sometimes it's turned people into monsters, which one was hoping wouldn't happen, but, that's the reality. One of the offshoots of the Union of Jewish Women here is an organization called Shalom Bayit,
Yes.
Peace in the Home.
Peace in the home, yes.
And what we do at Shalom Bayit also is we do hold conferences, or we hold seminars, we have panel discussions where we try and educate particularly Jewish women, but not only. I mean, if we have, women from outside the community wanting to attend, we have open arms to allow them in. And we have some very, very good speakers who speak about their own personal experiences, some of which are in graphic detail and pretty uncomfortable to listen to. But I'm of the opinion now that one has to be quite verbal about it. You can't use euphemisms anymore. You can't do that. It's not going to help. You've actually got to come out and say what is happening. There was a recent story, and perhaps some of your Australian listeners would remember the story. There was a story of an Australian teacher, a very frum teacher, who was found to have abused girls in her frum school for a number of years. And when she was found out, she immediately ran away to Israel. And Australia has been trying to get her back from Israel for many, many years. And just recently, 3 young sisters who were victims of her abuse put together a kind of a YouTube or documentary, whatever you want to call it. Excuse me, I've also got a bit of a cold here. They put together this YouTube presentation, and they spoke about what had happened to them while they were pupils at the school and what this teacher was capable of doing and how dreadful it had been for them. But not only the school, apparently they had very stern, very strict and very unloving parents. And as a result, that whole the connection of the home that didn't have a very loving environment and this teacher has had multiple dreadful effects on these 3 young girls. And I think it was just incredibly brave of them to speak out about it. And that's the sort of thing that we would hope in South Africa to avoid. And, we're making certain to show that video at our next conference.
Do you remember a few years ago, Oprah Winfrey started a school.
Yes, this wonderful academy.
A wonderful academy.
Yeah.
And they found one of the teachers abusing the girls there as well.
I know. It's inconceivable, isn't it, that sort of thing happens? But it happens. I don't understand why. I just can't understand what what illness there is in people, because I do think people who do that abuse suffer from something very detrimental to their health and detrimental to society, and one doesn't know what it is.
Possibly they've also been abused themselves as youngsters.
Absolutely.
Because you find a lot of the, particularly the country schools, with the principals, they beat the children. And remember, we've had quite a few incidents here where one child was paralyzed for the rest of its life or something like that.
And corporal punishment now is against the law in South Africa. Yes. But, you know, South Africa has very good laws, but we don't have anyone to enforce them, unfortunately.
That's the problem.
And that's one of the problems.
We're taking a break. We'll be back in a few moments. Welcome back. We have in the studio Bev Goldman. We're talking about the Union of Jewish Women and the wonderful work they do. I just want to remind Bev, remember a few weeks ago when you were here, I mentioned the late Sally Cussell.
Yes.
Did you manage to find out?
I did, yes.
And of course, I told you she spoke at the United Nations.
Absolutely, yes.
She was this
wonderful woman, wonderful woman, yes. She was an icon to a lot of us.
Yeah, she came from Oudtshoorn.
Yes, I believe so.
Right.
There was quite a big Jewish community in Oudtshoorn, wasn't there?
Oudtshoorn was known as the Jerusalem of South Africa.
Really?
Yerushalayim Shel Dorim Africa. And I can name you great people who came from Oudtshoorn. There was a Derby man, advocate man, I'm sure you may remember him. There was Leonard Schach.
The famous theatrical
person. As I said, Sally Cussell. I could go on and on this. Oudtshoorn was the place to be. Now, just to mention that this program is brought to you with the compliments of Maxie's Discount Butchery on the Strip in Glen Hazel, Johannesburg, for the finest products and service from Maxie Klaas, Trevor Wayner, Warren Klaas, and Celia Epstein. And this week they have these specials: pickled tongue at 90 Rand per kilo, pastrami at roast at 170 per kilo, stewing beef at 76 per kilo, mixed bologna at 99 per kilo. You can contact them on 011 485 1485, or you can fax them on 011 485 2991, and their email is maxiesdiscount@mweb.co.za. So, Bev, let's now continue.
Let's talk a little bit about Israel.
Right.
There appears to be a kind of a ceasefire at the moment between Hamas and Israel. I think, Isaac, that Hamas is realizing it's not a battle that it's ever going to win, Hamas as an organization. However, in order to keep its reputation, which for it is very important, it will continue sending missiles and rockets and burning kites and all sorts of things over the borders. However, something very interesting has happened. Perhaps some of your listeners would have heard about Gareth Cliff. Gareth Cliff was a presenter on Radio 702 and on various other radio stations. And he came out the other day with a statement. He was actually being interviewed on the radio, and he spoke about how Israel had every right to respond the way she did to what was happening at the border with Gaza. And he spoke about the fact that any other country confronted with possibly 40,000 violent protesters who were going to come over the border and, destroy what they could, any other country in the world would have done what Israel did. But of course, it's only ever Israel that is condemned for doing those things. And he was the recipient of some very, very nasty tweets and some very nasty emails, very ugly, but he stuck to his guns. And this morning in the Daily Maverick, there was an article by one of the writers there called Igo Fenter, and he's a very, very well-known writer and political analyst. And he spoke in absolute favor of what Gareth Cliff had said. He said he knew from the history and from watching on television and even from the Hamas people themselves, who acknowledged that of the 62 people who were murdered, quote unquote, by the Israelis, 50 of them were Hamas operatives and terrorists. And it was quite a breath of fresh air to read from somebody he's not Jewish, he's not particularly pro or anti-Israel, but he actually saw the wood through the trees. And it was the most refreshing article that I've read about Israel in a very long time.
Bev, 2 weeks ago, there was a demonstration in India.
Yes.
Also against Israel about this where there 50-odd people were killed.
Right.
And the Indian police or army shot and killed 11. They were rioting 11. Nowhere in the world did you hear one word condemning India for killing 11 citizens.
Well, of course, because India is not Israel.
Yes, correct. And of course, and Israel didn't recall the Indian ambassador.
No, definitely not.
So I just wanted to show you how it's such a double game that they play.
The bias is so appalling, Isaac. And you know, I do a lot of media monitoring. I do it for the Zionist Federation.
Nice.
I have been doing it for very many years. And we just, interestingly enough, now have a new media monitoring organization that is doing, that is collating the information for us. And prior to that, the previous one we used concentrated on South African media. This one is media all around the world. I am utterly horrified. I think the first day after the, after those deaths,
Yes, right.
there must have been in the region of 400 newspaper articles from newspapers around the world condemning Israel in the most violent and vociferous terms. It was just horrendous to have to read. I come away from there feeling very distressed and very depressed, but it's just incredible. I think we all know that there's so much antagonism against Israel, but until you sit and read what other newspapers from other countries say and what people say, you're not quite aware of the volume of distress and of vindictiveness against Israel. So much hatred, it's just unbelievable. And I maintain, having dealt with this for a long time, that the majority of it is really anti-Semitism. They're using anti-Zionism to hide their anti-Semitism behind, and it boils down to who's doing all that bad stuff. It's the Jews. It's always the Jews doing something. So, that's something that makes us very uncomfortable. And there is an increase in anti-Semitism at the same time now, a huge exponential increase in anti-Semitism. And I think it's very worrying. And I think Jewish communities all around the world need to be very, very careful and, watch what's happening. Our own CSO here is constantly alerting community members and saying, be on guard. And watch what happens, particularly outside the Jewish day schools and the shuls.
Correct.
And, the Jewish areas, because there are people who are just patently anti-Jew, and they will go the whole hog to make sure that they either attack them verbally or physically or something like that.
And those, they don't even know anything about what's going on in Israel.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are being paid. A lot are being paid.
Yes.
To speak against
Absolutely.
Israel. When it comes to, for example, a demonstration or a march or whatever it is.
Well, it's called rent a crowd.
Rent a crowd. That's exactly what
we've had that at a couple of the Zionist Federation functions that we've had over the years. We've had, busloads of people coming. And when you ask some of the people what they're doing there, they're very blunt about it. They say, we don't know, but we've been given a T-shirt and lunch and a trip on a bus, and here we are, and we're listening to what they say.
And some of them get 25 rand a day,
yes.
and for them it's
and they don't even know where Israel is or
correct.
what Israel
never
is.
Heard of Israel.
Yeah.
It's
it's just incredible. What it boils down to is this charisma that the anti-Israel people have got. They've got enough charisma to bring in hundreds of people and pay them to be, to shout anti-Israel slogans when they don't know why they're doing it.
Correct.
And those are the people also who are very dangerous. They set the tone. Very many of them belong to the BDS, boycott,
Yes.
divestment and sanctions organization against Israel, which purports, I might tell you, to be very, very not peaceful, but it purports to be only vocal, and it doesn't get involved in anything physical. But that's absolutely not true, because invariably what happens with these BDS protesters is that they start throwing stones or they start burning the Israeli flag, and, things get totally out of hand. So you can't believe any of these organizations, when they put forward their agendas and their mission statements and whatever. It's all a lot of nonsense. It really is a lot of hot air.
And they've got an enormous influence on our government.
I know.
And that's the problem.
I know. We have very many Muslims in our government,
Very
unfortunately.
Muslims in our government. I mean, I'm not anti-Muslim, but there are very few of, peaceful and one thing and another. But the influence that they've brought into the government is unbelievable. I saw the other day, and I'm not criticizing, where our own president went to a Muslim function.
Well, he went to celebrate a dinner after Ramadan.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
You see, and this
But
is
you know,
influence.
Isaac, yeah, it's the influence, but don't forget there are many more Muslims in South Africa than there are Jews.
Jews, correct.
And if President Ramaphosa can get the Muslim vote
That's what he
to
wants.
put him
He
back
wants
into power in
power.
2019, he will have achieved great things.
Yes. This is the reason why he did it. He
yeah.
wants that vote. He needs that vote.
He needs it very
He
badly,
needs
I
it very
know.
badly,
Things
particularly
are,
in the Cape.
yeah.
He needs that
Yeah.
vote.
Well, there's a problem now in the Cape with Patricia de Lille, and if she's going to lose her position, which she is, you know, the DA voters might move away from the DA, which is also problematic. So, yes, we have very interesting
We're going
politics in
through
South Africa.
very volatile
aren't we?
times
Yeah.
here in Johannesburg.
You know, as Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That's exactly where we are at the moment.
Welcome back. We're talking to Bev Goldman. Bev's going to now update us what's happening at the Zionist Fed.
Well, last week, Rosebank Mall had a very interesting exhibition of photography on all the 4 levels. And right at the very top, there's a photographic shop called Photo ZA, obviously meaning South Africa. And there was an exhibition there that was put on by the South Africa Friends of Israel and the Embassy of Israel. And what happened was that they had 2 young Israelis who came to South Africa and 2 young South Africans who went to Israel. And they took a whole lot of pictures on Instagram, these youngsters. Loads of pictures of Israel and South Africa, but, you know, not necessarily tourist destinations, but how the Israelis live, how the South Africans live. And they mounted an exhibition at this photographic shop. And it was absolutely fascinating because they had, you know, for example, an inner city somewhere in Israel and an inner city somewhere in South Africa. And you could compare the two. And the end result was that there are many more similarities than there are differences between the two. So that was very good. There were about 100 people who came. Inevitably and unfortunately, the BDS arrived and they had a huge protest outside the doors, and they were waving their Palestinian flags and they were tearing up Israeli flags and they were being abusive and they were being shocking. But the people inside, we paid absolutely no attention to them. Fortunately, there were the CSO guys and the police were there as well. And it was a very interesting exhibition. So well done to all of those who were involved. SAFI, which is the South African Friends of Israel, which is an offshoot of the Zionist Federation, is holding a very big conference this weekend. SAFI actually has as its members Christian Zionists from all over South Africa and from surrounding African countries. And I'm not sure, but I think this might be the 5th conference that they're having since they started. And it's going to be held in the Johannesburg City Hall. So you can imagine how many people are going to be there if they had to hire the City Hall. And they have some wonderful speakers from Israel. They have Ben Dror Yemini, who is an Israeli analyst and a journalist. I'm very much one of his groupies. I think he's absolutely wonderful. And they have Sivanya Iri. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, Isaac.
No.
She runs an organization called Innovation Africa. It's an NGO. She's a young Israeli woman who went to live in Paris at some stage. And it's an NGO which supplies electricity, solar power, to some of the poorest villages across Africa. And she has given water and electricity to many thousands of black people across Africa. It's absolutely amazing. She received recognition at the United Nations for it. She's a young, beautiful, very well-spoken young girl, and she decided that this was her mission in life, and she has done wonderfully. And of course, what she's done is she's used all Israeli products. So the Israeli solar products are all over, and gradually she's allowing, or she's educating people across the African continent into the innovations that come out of Israel. You know, she doesn't stress it all the time, but ultimately people understand that what they're getting, those benefits which they're getting for nothing, are coming from Israel. And she's funded by some of the very largest, donors and companies around the world. She's gone off to get funding, and it's astounding to see what she's done. You know, kids who've never had an electric light, kids who can't go to the library because they've never been able to see it, kids who don't know what water is other than getting it from a stream, are now the recipients of electric lighting, electricity, and solar heating. And I mean, it's just amazing. So, kol hakavod to her for having done this. So, as I say, she's one of the speakers, and there will be probably in excess of 1,000 people, I should imagine, at this conference. And it's going to be absolutely wonderful. They will talk very much about religious Israel, because these are all Christian Zionists who firmly believe, of course, in the Old Testament. Correct. And in the fact that Israel belongs to the Jews biblically. And they will also talk a lot about Israeli innovations, all about the positive parts of Israel. I don't think that they're going to touch on the politics. I'm sure not, because one has enough of the politics, which is all biased and bigoted and prejudiced anyway. But I think it's going to be like that, and it's an outstanding initiative on the part of the Zionist Federation, and it's quite a treat to be participant there.
It's very, very exciting. A week ago I had in the studio here, last week I had Shirley Zar.
Oh, right.
The architect.
Yes.
Her daughter just won an award from UNESCO, 5 top women in the world in Paris.
Oh,
she
my
won
goodness,
an award
really? Yeah.
for helping children with chest problems, a pulmonologist. She's a professor of chest diseases.
Yes.
She's done wonderful work in all over Africa. And she mentioned 4 other women as well from all over the world who've gone out of their way. And one of them she mentioned was a lady where you take a tube and you wrap a certain chemical around it, and you can take water which has got, say, from a river which is bad, and when that water runs through that tube,
it gets purified.
Really? That's an Israeli invention.
Yeah.
And she's busy doing that right throughout Africa as well. So it's unbelievable.
It is incredible. It's incredible that the innovations coming out of Israel are amazing. I don't know if I told you, but I'm with the South Africa Israel Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
And I send out newsletters regularly which have Israeli innovations in them. And I deal with 5 sectors in particular: medical, devices, environment. Isn't it terrible when you draw blank when you've got this in front of you?
We call it a senior moment.
Senior moment, yeah. We do agriculture, we do cybersecurity and information technology. And my most recent one was a medical one. Now, remember that I do these regularly, once a month, once every 3 weeks. The latest one I sent out on Friday had 10 new medical innovations from Israel. 10 which I got in the last 2 weeks. It's absolutely astounding what comes out of there. So that's going to form part of the conference on Sunday, the SAFI conference as well, the innovations, because South Africans, ordinary South Africans with whom I'm in touch quite often, are thirsting. They're desperate for all these Israeli innovations. They want the medical devices. They particularly want the agricultural innovations, because there are so many farmers, small-holding farmers in South Africa who really and truly, they want the water innovations. They want, for how you look after, how you have pesticides that aren't dangerous to any of the plants or the vegetables or whatever. And really, it's about time our government got off its little throne and actually acknowledged and understood that there's a lot that they can get from Israel. And that's a very big problem we have here.
Right.
Big problem.
Right, Bev, I want to thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much,
Isaac. It's been a pleasure
Isaac.
having you again and as an update. Just excuse me, I've got a slight cold as well. And just to wish you well, have a wonderful week. And in a few moments, I hope to have Adam Kroc, the grandson of Solly Kroc.
Okay.
He got 10 distinctions in matric.
Only 10?
Only 10. There were 3 brothers, all got 10.
Good heavens.
All 3. And he's studying at Yale University.
Oh, really?
So
What's he
I asked him
doing?
to come in just to give us a background of what's happening on the Jewish or the Zionist scene in the American
campuses.
universities.
Very bad. It's very, very bad. I know.
Yeah.
What is he doing at Yale?
I don't know exactly.
Oh, he'll tell you.
So
well, I'm sure
you.
it'll be very
I want to wish you
interesting.
well, and
thank you, Isaac, for having me.
Best.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We now have in the studio Adam Kroc, the grandson of Solly Kroc, one of my closest friends. And Adam at the moment is studying at Yale University. He'll tell us all about it. Welcome. Good afternoon, Adam, and how are you?
Hi, I'm good thank you for having me, Isaac. I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day in Joburg.
Beautiful day.
Yeah.
It was cold this morning, but it's warmed up nicely now. Now tell us the background. You got sent. Do you remember? I did interview you on High FM.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
Yes, High FM. It goes back a few years now.
Yeah.
When you got it, and then I did your brother, and I did your other younger brother as well.
Yeah.
Right. Just tell us where you are at the moment, what you're studying, and the background, what's happening at all the American universities, because there's a lot of anti-Semitism going around now.
Yeah, sure. So I study now at Yale University, which is in the United States. It's in Connecticut, about 2 hours from New York. You know, when most South Africans don't really, I guess, know the New England area, but it's you can take a train. It's very beautiful, kind of like Joburg, very leafy. I'm studying ethics, politics, and economics, which is the equivalent to what I think they have here at WITS and UCT of politics, philosophy, and economics. I think they replaced the philosophy with ethics because there's a very famous ethicist there, Shelley Kagan. And yeah, so my classes span the spectrum from kind of studying more like neoliberal economics, kind of microeconomics, macroeconomics, to philosophy, kind of a survey of Western philosophy, from Locke to Kant, and the politics is more modern political theory, which is kind of like modeling different political arrangements around the world. Mostly, though, in America it focuses, because American culture is so insular and introspective, it focuses mostly on kind of representative government. And
now, what year are you in?
So I'm a third year going into fourth year.
And how long is the course? 5 years?
It's 4 years. It's
4 years.
Yeah, and that in South Africa, most degrees are 3 years with honours, and so this is kind of the inclusive honours.
Yes, right. Yeah. So, right now, just tell us about the Yale University, the background about it.
Yeah, sure. So Yale was founded in 1701, where I think there were 2 teachers and 1 student as a theological school. So you look at Yale's motto, it's both in Hebrew and Latin, and it's Aureum Vitamim in Hebrew and Lux et Veritas in Latin, which is, light and truth. And that is a biblical reference to Aaron's breastplate. Having an Aureum Vitamim on it.
Yes.
So over the years, Yale became less religious based and more secular, as with America's history, and it's I can't remember the exact number of US presidents who've been there. I think maybe 5. The most famous are George Bush, who famously, he once came and he said that he wasn't a very good student. He was mostly partying with all the fraternities, which are these kind of party organizations in the US, and he famously got C's, and so at Yale those are referred to as the presidential grade, to get a C. And John Kerry is another famous alumni who was there during the Vietnam War, and was famous for his protests on campus. I think in America you have the Ivy League, which is a collection of the kind of most prominent and oldest universities. And so among the number of the Ivy League are, Brown University, Harvard University, Princeton, Yale, University of Pennsylvania, who am I leaving out? Dartmouth and Cornell. And of them, Yale's culture is known for being the most academic and most, I would say in America, when you talk about Yale, it's more, these people tend to be, just academic and more learned than the other universities.
But no like extramural activity.
Oh no, there are lots of extramurals, and so Yale's extramurals are known for its rowing. They have the famous Harvard-Yale rowing competition, which is kind of similar to the Oxford-Cambridge rowing. It's known for its squash. It's known for its hockey. It has a brilliant ice hockey team. Yeah.
Tell me, what is the student body?
The student body, today it's one of the most diverse in the world. You have people from all 50 states in the US, and you have from about, anywhere from 50 to 70 different countries. And so 10% international students. And so South African, there tend to be 3 a year. So roughly 12 in the colleges.
How many students would?
Oh, so each class is about 1,300 students,
Right.
and they just increased it, I think. So it's now about 1,500 a year. So overall, there are about 6,000 students in the whole university.
6,000 students.
Yeah,
A
and
lot of students.
yeah. Sometimes I wake up and I see someone walking. I'm like, where have you been this whole time? I've never seen you around.
Now, do you stay on campus or do you?
Yeah, so I stay on campus for the
They've
moment.
got a residence. They've got residence.
They do, and they're beautiful residences. It's a kind of a collegiate Gothic style. So anyone who's listening, I really highly recommend you look up Yale University. And I mean, primarily the reason I chose it is because I'd never seen any of the colleges, and I was visiting a few of them. And I'd grown up with an image of Oxford University because South Africans tend to be closer to the British. And when I arrived there, I was blown away by the architecture. It's the middle of America, where you have kind of, America is not known for its architecture, really. You kind of have normal homes, all of them, but you have this beautiful kind of Gothic fortress in the middle of Connecticut. And so it's really stunning. And freshman year, so the first year, all the students most of the students stay on Old Campus, which is where the initial university used to be. And it's this huge quadrangle of about 800 students, and just beautiful huge trees, olden Gothic architecture. It's very beautiful.
Tell me now, getting back, is there a Jewish student body there?
Yes, I mean Yale. I think of the Ivies, it's the second highest proportion of Jewish students, 1 in 3, so about 27%. So yeah, just less than 1 in 3 are Jewish. And so there's a thriving Jewish center. So Hillel has a presence. There's the Slivka Center, which is for Jewish life. You can go there, get a kosher meal, go there for prayers. And there's also, Yale's known for its secret societies, which are these, in fourth year, they kind of, these societies try and recruit students who are, distinguished in their fields or distinguished for some, either extracurriculars or for academics. And there's actually a Jewish one called Shabtai, which was I think a very influential and a prosperous Jewish businessman named Shabtai in New York, who's given money for this society, which is run by a Chabad rabbi, Shmuley Hecht, whose uncle was a rabbi here.
He's a rabbi here.
Yeah,
Rabbi
Yossi
Hecht
Hecht,
from Wendywood. Tell me, and Zionist Society?
There's the Yale Friends of Israel,
Yes.
which they advocate for Israel, and they're a Zionist society.
And do you find, excuse me, do you find any anti-Semitism?
No, I've
None
never
at all.
found
Nothing at all.
No,
Yeah.
no. And when you compare it to, American society is very Zionist. It has a lot of religious elements, which are a lot of evangelicals who tend to be very pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, no, nothing compared to South Africa, nothing compared to the kind of protests you see in South Africa, which are sometimes riddled with anti-Semitism.
A few weeks ago, we had this incident in Israel where 59 people were killed.
Yeah.
What was the reaction there at?
University's been off campus. We finished in May, so there wasn't a student reaction to it.
Right.
Yeah, but people my age tend to be, more liberal towards the Israel Palestinian issue, and I guess, I can give you a little bit of my perspective, which is viewing it very similar to South Africa's situation, where you have two different parties who are radically against each other, both are trying to set up their own nations, and I guess at least my perspective is you want a peaceful solution to this, and it's hard to see what's going to happen over the next few years, just because I don't think there are very good peace partners on both sides.
We're taking a break. We're back in a few moments. Welcome back. We have in the studio Adam Kroc. Now tell us about your older brother, Devin. Where's he studying, or what's he doing?
Yeah, so Devin's, he graduated last year, and he was studying at Stanford University, which, even though it's not officially part of the Ivy League, is today probably considered, the best university in the world, because it's it's so close to Silicon Valley and it's known for its computer science. And most of the students studying there will end up either at Google, Facebook, the top 4, Amazon. So really the tech center of the world.
What did he graduate as?
So Devin studied politics, and he wasn't that interested in. Well, he was interested in computer science, but it wasn't his main passion. And,
right.
But my younger brother Jaden,
Yes, Jaden.
he also studies at Stanford, and he is doing computer science.
Computers and science.
Yeah, and so we'll probably. I mean, I haven't spoken to him about his career plans yet, but we'll probably end up working at one of the top 4, or doing something tech related.
Yeah. When you mentioned Ivy League, when I remember Ivy League, it always recalled everybody dressing in a suit with a collar and a tie, and the suit had a very different style or collar. That was the Ivy League style.
Yeah, no. So it has a history of preppiness,
yes,
of being very posh, very kind of, I guess, a feeling of superiority. And I think over the years, I mean. So there's a joke about Yale that it's stale, male, and pale, and that used to be the kind of the demographics of the university, where it was really just very white, waspy. But over the years it's becoming more diverse, and I think that, I mean, it still has those elements, where you have these super wealthy, super influential parents who are sending their children to these universities, but I mean, over the years, it's becoming more merit-based and more diverse.
Now, when you qualify, what do you want to do? Please go
on. I mean, I really want to. I'm thinking of either I really want to be a writer, and I also want to go into politics, and probably in South Africa.
In South Africa.
In South Africa. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I read your poem, or whatever you want to call it, that your grandfather Solly sent to me last week sometime. It was excellent.
Oh, thank you.
Are you interested in journalism at all?
Yeah, I mean, the type of writing I love to do, and I would say it's inspired by Jewish philosophy, which is, kind of tikkun olam. So I could see myself doing journalism. I don't think I'm attracted to any one style of writing, and I could definitely see myself doing some journalism.
Now, just to go back to your heritage. I knew your late Uncle Aby and Solly going back 50, 60 years ago. They used to be members of the Siddledeen Shul. As a matter of fact, last week on the 28th of May, it was your grandfather's 89th birthday. Yeah. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, no, I went to a dinner with him.
Yeah, 89th. And when he was born in 1929, and 19 hours later, the late Uncle Aby was born. So there's a difference of a day and a half between the two of them.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy story.
Identical twins. And of course they started, the rest is history, they started with a small little pharmacy, and then expanded, became Twins Holdings, Twins Products, and the rest is all history, because they were renowned throughout the whole Jewish world. They're involved in the Bar Ilan University. I'm busy doing a biography of the late Solly and Aby, and
you mean the other way around?
Sorry, my apologies.
The very alive Solly and
Solly's very alive. Sorry. Yeah, the late Aby and Solly, and Ben Gurion University, and they've involved. You name it, they've been involved in every aspect through the Jewish community, not only in South Africa, but in Israel as well. There's that Beer Yaakov Girls' School. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I wasn't. Yeah. I knew about Bar Ilan University.
Bar Ilan, they got doctorates from Bar Ilan, from Professor Rabbi Reckman. I don't know if you remember. And your father, Martin, he used to sit opposite me when I was the Gabba of Siddledeen Shul. He was a young little boy, and he was fasting one year, and I gave him some smelling salts, and he nearly passed out. I remember it was like today. So I would go back, and they had the house in Observatory there in Frederick Avenue, that big double story, where they lived for years and years and years with your late granny, Rita, of blessed memory. So, Adam, it's been very interesting. what do you find? What has been the highlights in your life? You can just give me a few ideas, or with your grandparents, or with your. What has been some of the highlights?
I mean, a personal highlight was. I mean, it's a very stressful and very competitive process in getting into these universities, and I'd say I was working very hard to help my younger brother get in, and he eventually did. And so I think, I mean, I don't see my highlights of my life as, you know, moments, as opposed to kind of, you know, victories of struggle, you know.
But what? How many universities did you apply to be admitted, say, to Yale?
I mean, so I applied to around 9 universities.
9 universities.
Yeah, and I was admitted to kind of most of the Ivies except for Harvard. So Princeton.
Brandeis University?
I didn't apply Brandeis, but I did. So I was part of the Yale debating team, and as part of the debate team, we travelled around New England and we went to Brandeis. And it's a beautiful university, very modern. Yeah, very lots of trees. Yeah, it's a very nice place to go to. Yeah.
And where did you stay in? Did you ever go to Los Angeles?
Yeah, I visited before.
Yes.
Yeah, and I have some family there.
You got your family there.
Yeah,
there's
so
Paul the Croc.
Paul, yeah, my uncle.
Yes, Croc.
Sharon lives there. Who's my aunt. So my father's family's all over, and you know.
They got family in England. They got family in Israel.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, there was a farewell to a Rabbi Weiss, Rabbi Abner Weiss in Los Angeles, who married one of your aunts or uncles, and your grandfather at one stage lived in Los Angeles. He used to travel quite a lot. And he bought a house there and he used to go to that shul there, where Rabbi Abner Weiss was the rabbi. And all the famous film stars used to come to that shul, the Beverly Hills. And then later on he retired, resigned, and he went to England. Then he came back, started another one. And we did a program together, your grandfather and myself, wishing him well on his retirement. So it's been. When are you going back? In
August.
In August.
Yes, it's a bit different the school year.
So what are you doing now between June and August?
Well, I have to kind of work that out. I mean, so far, I've just been kind of resting. I mean, it was quite a tough semester, the last one. But I'm thinking of, trying to do some writing, maybe do some journalism, and maybe enter some South African politics.
Yeah, okay. So it's been a pleasure having you in the studio. I want to wish you well and go well. And this will be live this afternoon at about 6 o'clock. You can get it on YouTube and you can get it on Mix. Okay. So you can get it. And the link is www.chai. It's 20 chai. It's 20chai.co.za. And I want your grandfather to hear it as well.
Okay.
So thank you. It's been a pleasure having you in the studio. I want to thank Ilan for controlling, my controller, and to wish you all well. Have a wonderful week.